And you look around and you say, wow, people are looking stretched. They are looking stressed. They are sometimes hopeless. And it put me back into a place of, Rikimah, what are we all here for in the world? Some of us are here to invent. Some of us are here to be doctors and lawyers and teachers and all the things. What's your calling? For me, it's always been about caretaking. It's always been about looking at the individual and saying, how can I pour into you? What can I do as an individual and as a human in the world to show you that you matter and to try and walk with you on that journey? And what made me create Be Well 365 had a lot to do with the fact that I was both seeing people in the work environment burning out left and right. I was seeing people around me that were going through all of these different emotions. And you realize that there's a lot of people who just also don't know. They don't know how to repair it. They don't know how to fix it. They don't know how to come out of it.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about wellness. I'm delighted to welcome Rikimah Glymph. Rikimah is a wellness advocate. She is the founder and CEO of Be Well 365 and Glymph Consulting LLC. She is also the author of Total Wellness. You can reach Rikimah at her websites, and I'll include those links in the show notes. Welcome, Rikimah. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am delighted. And I would love, if it's okay, to start with your wellness journey. Why are you passionate about this? Why does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this has been in the makings for years. When I was a kid, it was always about, is my friend okay? Are my siblings okay? Are the people around me okay? Is the world okay? Right. And as I was coming up, that was always a theme that was very much an undercurrent of the way I showed up in the world. My dad used to always say, she's always trying to take care of somebody, always caretaking, right? Always trying to, if someone said they were sick, here I go. You need something? What can I do to be of service, right? So fast forward to came out to the East Coast, and I actually started working in people work. So I took sort of a MBA and walked into the nonprofit experience where people were working countless hours over and over and over again. So much so, and so committed to these missions that people were burning out left and right also. And I found myself triggered in the same way. What do they need? What can we do to help them? What is happening here? And then you add on, the instances of the world around us where there's a lot of things that are bringing a lot of discomfort to a lot of people happening. You add COVID, the pandemic, into the equation also. Never mind parents, right? That in terms of just the added stuff coming from children. And you look around and you say, wow, people are looking stretched. They are looking stressed. They are sometimes hopeless. They are sometimes reaching. And it put me back into a place of, Rikimah, what are we all here for in the world? Some of us are here to invent. Some of us are here to be doctors and lawyers and teachers and all the things. What's your calling? And for me, it's always been about caretaking. It's always been about looking at the individual and saying, how can I pour into you? What can I do as an individual and as a human in the world to show you that you matter? And to try and walk with you on that journey. So I feel like it's always been very much a part of my making. I come from a very long line of also faith healers and people who have always tended to people in the community and so forth. And so it also feels very genetically driven too.
Great.
But this recent occurrence and what made me create Be Well 365 had a lot to do with the fact that I was both seeing people in the work environment burning out left and right. I was seeing people around me that were going through all of these different emotions. And oftentimes when I'd ask them, what's going on with you? You all right? How, like what? Let's sit together. Let's take a walk together. You realize that there's a lot of people who just also don't know. They don't know how to repair it. They don't know how to fix it. They don't know how to come out of it. And then at the height of when the pandemic started, my own son fell into unwellness because he's looking around the world and he's internalizing all of this violence towards people who look like him. He's looking around the world and he's saying, why doesn't our world look the way that you told me yours did when you were growing up? The kids have struggles in the school environment, and then COVID scared everybody. And so what happened for him was he started to reflect as a single kid. What happens if mom perishes with COVID? What happens if there is some injustice in the world? What happens then? It's just me, right? And that's a lot for a 6, 7 year old to have to ponder and to sit with. And I actually just, unplugged him altogether. I said, he is doing what a lot of people in the world are doing, going down these rabbit holes with the news, going down these rabbit holes, reading everything, seeing everything through social media. I took it all away. I went to Barbados and plopped us both in Barbados for 2 years until he looked like he was better, until he started sounding like himself again. And the idea there was, I knew that he was oversaturating himself with too many things. And it meant that we needed to detach from what was normal so that I could start to reintegrate things as I was weeding out what was the thing that was making him so unwell. When I came back, I said, absolutely not. We need to do this for other people too. There are other people in the world that need the same help. Maybe they can't detach and maybe they can't go sit on an island for 2 years, but they certainly could use someone who has trained a lot around it, who has spent a lot of time learning about it, who has spent a lot of time with people to help them to start to problem solve a lot of what was holding them. And really what I discovered was a lot of people kept saying, Rikimah, what you do feels like life coaching. It feels like it's different from a psychiatrist who's looking to, figure out what the diagnosis is. This is like you're looking at basic things and you're saying, no, it's not your job that's doing that. It's the way your life is set up. Come on, let's start to integrate some things. Let's get you some help as a new mom. Let's order a laundry service, right? Your kids are not okay, great. Let's figure out what kind of vacation or time you can take, sick leave you can take, because you got to prioritize the kid. The kid's not okay, mom's not okay, dad's not okay, right? And so
Absolutely.
it was very basic, what felt basic to me. And I think I take it for granted, but it was very much what felt like we needed to get back to the basics around where are the priority areas and what needs to come first, second, and third in order for us to be okay. And that has something to do with our value system. What do we value, right? For me, anybody that knows me knows my son is my top value. He's my top priority. When he wasn't okay, I became unokay also. And that was weird for me because I had never experienced the world where something else had that level of impact on me, right? And what that meant was I got to go get him okay. Because if he's not okay, then it's going to impact me in all these ways. And that hurts us both. And for a lot of people who come to us through the wellness retreats, through, coaching, through even books, that when we do book readings and so on and so forth, a lot of those people are grappling with some of the same things. Where do I start? How do I start to prioritize myself? I do feel blue, but I'm working out, I'm eating right. I still feel blue, right? And I don't want to take medicine. So like, what can I do? So a lot of what we do at Be Well is we train people up on what are these pillars of wellness, right? It's not just about you eating and working out. It's so much more than that. And in doing that, given that knowledge, we're also saying, here are a couple of basic things you can start with, right? And here are ways that we can start to hold you accountable and you can hold yourself accountable. And here is an insight into how fixing that one area or working on that one area actually impacts all these other things, right? And lastly, that we never stop working on it.
It's not a one and done, is it?
That's right.
It's the whole thing. It is beautiful to hear your story and to hear that you have that beautiful combination of that caring heart and that desire and that drive to help other people combined with the skill to be able to do it. And you said it comes so naturally to me. And sometimes it can be surprising when something comes naturally to you, but it's a struggle for other people and that it doesn't come naturally. So how beautiful that you have put together ways that work. And I love that you have action. And I love that you have this holistic approach that it includes various aspects of our life, including especially what do we value? And that's an individual matter. For you, it is your son. And for any of us who are parents, I think our kids are going to be super high on that priority list. And it's interesting. One of the things that I was waiting to hear was if you had had any struggles. And it really didn't sound in your story like that was an issue. It's come naturally. But it was interesting as you were talking about these people who are working in these nonprofits and their heart is in the right place. I want to serve. I want to do good. I want to help other people.
That's right.
And they get burned out.
That's right.
because one person that we often forget to take care of and to prioritize and to value is ourselves.
That's right.
Sometimes we feel like my purpose in life is to serve others and to bless others and to lift others. And in the process, if I'm a doormat, if I'm taken for granted, if I don't matter, that's okay as long as the other people are okay. But I'm sure what you have realized and what I have realized is that when we work on ourselves and that we are in a good place, then we are empowered to be able to help others. And we're also happier while we're doing it. We can do the exact same actions of helping and serving others from a place of being burnt out and giving everything I have, or from a place of fullness and content and wholeness and purpose,
That's
and
right.
be able to give from a place of love rather than a place of obligation or I have no worth if I'm not doing this.
That's
So well done and thank you. And I loved how you talked about let's unplug. If you're concerned about the world, if you're concerned about all the things that you don't have control over,
that's right.
and the world feels so big and so scary and so, I just feel powerless.
Yeah.
Let's shrink our world and
Yeah.
shrink it until it's manageable.
That's
And
right.
when I'm in a good place, then bring me back so that I can help and lift and be with others.
That's
So
right.
beautiful personal examples. I loved that. Thank you for sharing your story. And I have to say, your son is so fortunate to have you. How
Yeah.
wonderful to be a child who knows that his mother prioritizes him.
That's right.
And what a wonderful blessing that will be to him his entire life. So I just applaud you. I thank you. Now, I was going to ask you if we could go into these 8 pillars of wellness that you talk about, and let's elaborate on them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, a lot of times people understand that, part of the wellness has got to be your physical, right? How are you taking care of your body? How are you nourishing that body? A lot of people know that usually when people talk about wellness, they say, what are you eating? How's your nutrition? Right? But then there are other sections like, how's your mind? Are you mentally well? Right? Because if you're someone that is mentally unwell, well, the mind is going to impact a lot of other things too, right? How's your spirit? That was a real one. That was one that tricked a lot of people up. Tripped a lot of people up because when people heard me say, "How's your spirit? How's your spirituality?" They heard religion.
Ah,
Actually, that wasn't what I was talking about. What I was talking about is what is your connection to the greater world around you? Does it really feel like you're just walking on your own? Or do you realize that we are just one small part of an entire piece and that we all have a role to play in this great world, right? And so, how is your connection to the environment, right? Are you environmentally well? You talked about or you mentioned my own story. My background is I came from an environmentally unwell environment. I was raised in the projects. I was around a lot of violence. I came in a household with my mom with a lot of violence and a lot of drug stuff going on, right? And if it wasn't that my dad saw that and said, this is not going to work for her, I need to take her elsewhere so that she can thrive in the world, right? Maybe things could have been different. But he saw that I was unwell because of what was happening for me as I was coming of age to see and to witness all of the struggle that was happening around me within the house that I was, in. So environmental wellness tends to be a major one for me. That's why it was easy for me to say, all right, Malik, time to go. If sitting here is making you sick, it's time to go. Let's take a bird's eye perspective and let's zoom this thing out and let's figure out how we get back, grounded to where we need to be. Folks laugh all the time because I say, be careful with the energies you bring around you. Be careful with the places you put yourself in, right? Sometimes just because their family doesn't make them the things that need to be around you if it's too toxic. All of that plays on your mind and your spirit and your environments, right? There's other sections around occupational wellness. A lot of people, a lot of the work that I was originally doing was organizations saying, I need you to come talk to our staff because they're not activating. And the truth is probably a good 50 to 75% of these guys were occupationally unwell. They were burnt out. They no longer wanted to work on that mission anymore. They were stuck because the compensation was good, right? But then as a result, they lamented showing up for work. That turned into some low-grade depression. Even in some instances, people acting out even, falling apart at home. So how's your occupational wellness, right? And are you doing things that are both inspiring to the mind, inspiring to the spirit? Are you feeling connected to it? The other one is financial wellness. How's your finances? COVID did big number on a lot of people because it meant that now we're taking care of relatives that we didn't have to take care of before. And it meant we're paying for, hospital bills still. It meant a lot of people got laid off, right? So when we think about the wellness wheel, we're talking about all of that, not some of it, all of it. Today, I might be feeling spiritually well, but maybe I'm not feeling physically well, right? That's been one of my biggest struggles. My biggest struggles is I pour into people so much that I don't set aside enough time for self to work on my physical self, right? And it's only in the last few years that I've been like, Rikimah, what's that about? Right? Because we got to constantly reflect and ask, where's that coming from? Why are you not prioritizing this piece over, taking another meeting, right? And the truth is there's some hard truths when we start to lift these onions up to say, why are you acting like that? Why are you allowing these things to transpire? I told my son at the top of this year, because he says, how come all of a sudden you're like, got to eat our vegetables, got to get out and get active? I said, well, son, because this is the year that I'd like to continue to walk in what I believe. You
Ooh, I
can't
like that.
say things and also then expect people to know that it's the truth if you're going to be a hypocrite about it.
Oh, and that makes such a difference. I love that statement. I want to walk it. I want to walk it. I don't want to just talk it. I want to
That's
do this. I want to be an example. And that is so beautiful. I loved how you, as you are expounding on these different areas, how it encompasses all the different aspects of our life and our life experience and our
that's
very being. And that matters because we have, I don't know, for a long time, compartmentalize different aspects of our well-being. Like we have our physical health, we have our work.
yeah.
There is zero connection between the two. We're not allowed. And then we have our family, our relationships, our connections. Well, that's in a separate box, and that has nothing to do with anything else. Well, let me tell you, any person who is struggling at home, when they get to work, it is impossible to lay that at the door and then walk in with this fresh perspective, and I am all in and I am ready to get to work and do whatever needs to
That's
be
right.
done
That's right.
because my heart and my mind is elsewhere.
That's
It's
right.
where those problems are.
That's
So I
right.
love that you're bringing in all these different things. And I think a very important part of our wellness is becoming self-aware.
Oof.
And until we start looking at these different things and asking, how are your finances?
That's
How
right.
are your relationships?
That's right.
How is your spirit? And until we, because a lot of times we don't even think about it. Like you said, you talk to people and you ask, how is your spirit? And they're like, what are you talking about? I don't go to church. And it's like that's not the question that I asked. I need you to open up your eyes a little bit and recognize that there is a part of you, whether you are aware of it or not, that needs to be fed and nourished.
That's right.
Are you aware? And
That's
are
right.
you taking care of you? So that is just so beautiful, that bringing things together. And you talked about walking it, which I love. And I am a big fan of action steps because I also believe that that is the way that we change. In fact, there's a quote by James Clear that I love. It says, the most practical way to change who we are is to change what we do. And so would you mind sharing with us a couple action steps? So let's say I've been listening and I've been hearing you talk about these things that maybe I haven't even considered. How am I at work? How am I with my spirit? How am I with my physical well-being? And as I'm listening, I'm realizing, you know what? There are a couple areas that are not where I'd like them to be. So now as I'm becoming aware, what do I do next?
That's right. That's right. So I think, and I'll say exactly what I say to other people. If I'm becoming aware that there's something that's not where it needs to be, I'm going to sit down And I'm a big fan of journals. I'm a big fan of putting pen to paper. You walk around my house, you see so many either to-do lists or pros and cons lists. Why? Because what's happening in my mind, by the time I put it to paper, sometimes they are not in sync. Sometimes what my spirit is reading, what based on what my mind wrote, was not in sync also. So I write all that stuff down on paper and I say, all right, so here's how I'm feeling today. Today, I'm feeling like it's a beautiful day, but I'm feeling a little stressed, a little tense. Like it took me a long time to ever say, I feel stressed. Why? Because I grew up in a stressful environment, which meant that I had normalized whatever that feeling was, right? Which means I'm one of those people that could walk out into the world and be highly stressed and no one ever know it. But that's also a silent killer. And so being aware that I was normalizing something that actually could give me cancer, that could make me sick even, right? Also meant that no one was seeing me properly respond or react to said stress. So my son would walk around and say, she's always the same. She's never stressed. Meanwhile, there'd be times at night when I'm like in tears and you can tell I was stressed because I couldn't talk without getting choked up, but I would never name it, right? And so the idea of naming how we're feeling feels important because then we give ourselves permission to work on whatever it is that we named. I feel stressed. Well, if I say it out loud, that means I got to do something about it, doesn't it? I mean, unless I like to feel stressed, right? I feel overweight. Well, some people don't want to say that out loud. But if it's true, why not? The only people that we are hiding from is ourselves because the rest of the world sees it whether we know it or not. So the point is how honest can we be with ourselves at our weakest time or at our most vulnerable time, right? Be alone, be by yourself when you make this list for yourself, because the last thing you want to do is be worried someone's going to find it, what you wrote down, right? And that is a whole other issue around vulnerability and being able to trust that people will know what to do with it when you say, my mind doesn't feel okay. I'm having weird thoughts today. Right?
Wow.
But I would write that stuff down for myself. And then I would look and I would say, of the things that I wrote down, what are the things that feel, or that look like on the surface, could be things that will bleed into major problems. Like if I'm going to write down my mind doesn't feel okay, then I want to prioritize that. And so what's the priority level, right? If my mind is not okay, if I'm, feeling sad in the inside, if I am very happy about what's going on the outside, and I'm excited because I get to see my friends, then that automatically signals to me that I need to start asking myself questions. Why? So if you're going to write something down, I think right next to it, say, why? Because really the reflection part is where the work is really at, right? Why do I feel blue today? Why? What's happening for me, right? If we can start to be honest with ourselves about these whys, it gives us a place to start in terms of, well, then here's the next question. What can I do about it? What's within my power, right? What's within my agency? My son is 13, or he's 13 this year. And you would never believe how many times he walks around saying, but I don't have agency to do anything about that, because he's talking agency as in what can I personally do as a 12-year-old versus power. Mom, but you have all the power, it feels to me. And so if you say go to bed, where's my agency in that? Are we negotiating this or not? Right? So you ask yourself, what do I have agency in what it is that's making me blue? Well, if today I'm feeling overweight, the agency I have is that I can go work out. I can watch what I'm eating today. I can listen to a few podcasts that help to uplift how I'm feeling about my physical, because maybe I'm being hard on myself actually, because maybe, in a reflective mode, maybe I'm comparing myself to everyone outside, right? Because a lot of that sort of image stuff is coming from where? Some childhood stuff, some images I saw outside, some things the TV showed me, maybe some things I heard, right? And so, the idea of writing down what's happening for you, the idea of looking at these wellness sections and saying, in these sections, what's going on, right? And the idea of asking when you see things that are unfavorable, why? And then the third question is, what can I do about it? What is my agency in this? I think is a great place to start. one thing I'll caution people, because I get this all the time, is there's never a day when these are all going to be perfect. It's inhuman. It's inhuman, right? Like we are not perfect as humans. The world around us is not perfect. And when we went to bed and we thought the world looked one way, we woke up and something else had happened, right? So if we can get ourselves out of this issue of perfection, we can also avoid feeling blue about it, right? It isn't meant to be perfect, but what can be perfect is how I choose to show up today. What I choose to do today that impacts how I'm interfacing with the world and how I experience the world, right?
Right. And I loved as you're bringing this up that things are simple and yet they're hard to do. So
Right.
the starting point, I have a piece of paper right here. I got a pen in my hand. I've been taking notes as you're writing things or as you're speaking. And so the idea that I have right now, some of the tools that I need to become self-aware
That's
is
right.
empowering. And it can also be a little frightening because
Yeah,
as you said, if I choose to become aware,
that's right.
I really should do something about that.
That's
And then,
it.
and then we recognize that dissonance where it's like, I sometimes la 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 la, don't tell me, don't show me, just let me go along my merry way. But when we become aware, then we're forced to make a choice.
That's right.
And because now that I know, if I don't do anything about it, I'm actually choosing into the
That's
thing
right.
that I don't want.
That's exactly it.
Whereas before, I may have been doing that, but it was unconscious.
That's right.
Now I'm aware. I have some responsibility, and that's a little bit painful. So I
That's right.
loved how you talked about let's name it.
That's
And
right.
in naming it, that gives us some power and some awareness. And then the next question is why? Let's get curious about this. I feel this way. In
That's right.
fact, I felt this way a long time. Or maybe as I'm becoming aware, I might recognize repeating patterns in my life. It's like this situation just seems to come up again and again in different forms.
That's right.
Why?
That's
Why?
it. Yeah.
And then bringing it further of what can I do about it?
That's right.
And this is another one of those situations where it's empowering.
That's
And
right.
yet it's also a little bit scary for some people
Yeah.
because if you say, I have no control, or as your son said, I have no agency,
That's right.
and I can do about this,
That's right.
then it also absolves me from having to do anything about it.
That's right. What did my dad say? Ignorance is bliss.
Right, right. But if we recognize, is there any piece of that? Let's say this repeating pattern in my life that I keep noticing. Is there something that I am doing? Is
That's
there
right.
something that I expect or that I believe about myself that
That's
is
right.
causing this cycle to repeat?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll
And
tell
as we
you what.
become aware, we
Yeah.
can actually change those cycles.
That's right.
And that is where we're going.
Well, and that's the hard part. I mean, I'll tell you, something that I've learned about myself, right? Because remember, we talked about walking in the walk, making sure that you are not being a hypocrite and that people can see it in action, right? Because I'm oftentimes walking around telling people, what's faith without action? You've got to move on these things, right? And so, for me, and I had to come clean with my son about it. So I am notorious for holding myself accountable and saying, I'm not perfect. I don't know why I am not perfect at all, right? I am human. So I'm telling my son, I said, son, I need to sit you down. I need to talk to you, right? And he's never mentioned. So earlier I mentioned that I'm working on my physical, right? My son has never mentioned it. He is probably the sweetest love bug you'll ever meet. Like he just never talks about these things. He says, Ma, I know that when you look in the mirror, you see the same things that everyone else is seeing. And so I'm not going to mention this thing. Never mind the fact that some people have dysphoria, right? But like this is where his mind is at 12 years old, right? And so I sat him down and I said, son, it's been a long time of me ignoring this section of my life, but it is tied to other things. And I said, it has taken me the last few years to peel this onion. And so when people say, wow, Rikimah, you've worked on all these things and we're just seeing you just leap over this hurdle and get all this and all these things, right? I'm the first of my family to own a home and to own multiples and to have traveled the world and have taken my son all over the world and all of these things. So there's all these firsts, right? And so people are saying, wow, everything's so great. And he is the mirror for me because I set him down and I said, son, I never want you to die and think that I was perfect. I also don't want you, I don't want to go knowing that you don't know all there is to know about me because that would be hurtful. And I said, the physical thing was attached to something that happened to me in college. I said, and it is only in this year that I have been able to openly say to myself, oh my God, Rikimah, this is all connected. You have created a thing because of something that happened. And so your pattern is that when things hurt, you start to create all of this stuff that then deflects, right? And that then pushes people so that they are not coming to you in these ways, right? So it's all about defense mechanisms and survival. This is what I said to my son. I said, because to say the things out loud, and here I go, I was all choked up when I said it to him. I said, because to say the things out loud means that I now have choices and I have to do something, right? So I say to him, I say, in college, this violation happened. And because it happened, I decided to put a cloak on. I decided to hide, right? And so I figured in my mind, right? Because here we go with mental wellness, right? My mind told me, if you just don't look away, you don't have to worry, right? And this is what the mind did in trying to make sense of what was going on, right? And so you fast forward many years, we're talking 15 years down the road. This is why I say things don't happen overnight. People should know that this is a constant evolution we're going to be constantly working on. It wasn't until I looked him in the face and I said, son, I challenged myself to look at this area. And what I found was immensely uncomfortable. Because it also now means I've got to deal with the psychological effects of this. I've got to deal with the emotional effects of this. And now I get to deal with the physical side of it also. But there is a undoing and a redoing that has become very present in this process. And now there is a forgiveness, there is self-love, there is all of these things that start to surface, all because, right, Linda, all because I had to ask a very important question of myself, which is, if this section continues to be the thing for you, why? What has happened? What is not happening? What has gone on in your life that means that you get to avoid one of the 8? Rikimah, you're not an avoider. You're not a person who doesn't focus. You are a person who believes in this. What happened? And I had to say it out loud. And then one step further is I had to sit with people that care about me and I had to explain. I just had this epiphany, right? But imagine all of the sort of grappling and all of the sort of tossing that came along with the realization, oh my goodness. I had shoved all this in the back of my mind for years. And fast forward 20 years, 15 years, you're now having to fess up. The process can be extremely scary for a lot of people. And I can attest and say, I opened up a bit of a box, but I would never take that box away. Because if we are trying to find peace in ourselves and in our environments and in our journeys, we do have to ask ourselves these questions so that we can repair sometimes, so that we can hug ourselves sometimes, and so that we can demonstrate to people who are watching us, because lo and behold, my son's been watching the entire time, And so it is important for him to know truths. It's important for him to see me struggle through it, because he needs to know that it won't all be easy, right? People say to me all the time, you make everything look so easy. Oh, but no. If I raised my hand and told you how not easy it has been, would that resonate with you? The majority of the world will find this not easy, because it means that you've got to look in the mirror, right? And what I would say to people who are listening is, but do it. Don't do it for other people. Do it for yourself, because we all deserve to live in a world where we can be happy, where we can feel gratitude, where we can feel belonging, right? We belong in this world the same as everyone else, right? And that we can thrive, not just survive, but thrive, knowing that we are of service to ourselves in so much of a deeper way, the same way, maybe, if not more, than the way that we're going to be of service to other people and into these environments where we work and otherwise, right? Because we are worthy of that. We are worthy of that. And so the idea of worthiness comes through big time. And so that's what I would, say to people.
I agree. The worthiness, I think, is super huge. I thank you for sharing that aspect. You have brought up something that is so important. And I think most of us have some form of trauma that has taken place in our lives. And one of the dangers of becoming self-aware and asking questions is finding things that we don't want to see and we don't want to deal with.
That's right.
I understand why people are afraid.
Yeah.
But we cannot heal that aspect of our life. And it doesn't affect one thing. You mentioned specifically in your case, it seems to be affecting the physical more than some of the others.
That's
But
right.
one area affects everything.
That's right.
And when we heal through those, then it affects everything.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate the reminder that we are worthy. We are worthy of love. We are worthy of connection. We are worthy of happiness, and we are worthy of healing. And that is the message that we share here today. And I thank you. Is there anything you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
Nope. I just want to make sure to remind people to just love themselves as they are wholeheartedly, whether perfect or not perfect. Continue to love yourselves and continue to work on it. It is a daily thing to work on. We will be working on it until we can no longer work on it. But don't give up, right? It's going to be challenging in some areas, but that never stopped anybody. So keep trucking along and know that you're worthy of all the things that you hope for. And remember that folks are watching. The little ones are watching. Other people are watching. And sometimes we need a little motivation when we look around the room. And so, people aren't alone. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that you're not alone. Many, many people are going through that journey too, whether they say it out loud or not.
Exactly. Well, Rikimah, thank you. This has been delightful.
You got it. I appreciate you.
Thank you. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Voltaire. He said, "I have chosen to be happy because it is good for my health." Today, I invite our listeners to choose to be happy and to take at least one action step toward better health and well-being. And please remember that you are worthy. I'll see you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the Free Stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.